Hey there, Legal Tea listeners. This is your host, Jenny Roselle. I hope you caught that I did not do an episode last week since new episodes always come out on Tuesdays, and of course last Tuesday was 4th of July. I think I forgot to mention this at the end of my last episode. I think I said, next week, but I totally didn't even realize it was going to be 4th of July. But it was a blessing in disguise because I got really busy at work and I fell a little bit behind on the podcast. So the holiday gave me a chance to get caught up on this. So here I am, back and refreshed and ready to rock and roll on today's new episode, which is a cautionary tale. And these kind of episodes are where we talk about real life cases, real life clients, and they are things that me or my office have actually worked on. For today's episode, we're going to be talking about a little bit of a sad situation, a sad case that my office is actively working on. And I'm not sharing it to bring down the mood. I'm not like a poo-poo kind of person. But honestly, to shine a light on the situation and hopefully have you all learn a thing or two. And one of the biggest takeaways is something that I shout from the rooftop all the time, that we need to get our estate planning done, even if it's the most basic documents like a healthcare and financial power of attorney. Just get them done as soon as possible, not when and during an emergency is currently happening. And that happened here. What I mean by that is there were no documents in place at the time the emergency happened, which to get documents in place at that time just honestly added to the stress and to everyone's plate. It was not ideal. So let's get into it, starting at the very beginning. So this is a story about a guy named Mike. And side note, that's not really his name. But for sake of the story, we're going to name him Mike for this episode. So Mike suffered a massive stroke, and even before the stroke, he was battling early stages of Parkinson's disease. Now, Mike's brother, Tom called my office, and he explained what was going on and basically said, Mike doesn't have any documents in place, first of all, and second of all, we don't know what we should be considering and thinking of, so help. Mike at the time of this event was in the middle of a divorce as well from his longtime spouse. And Mike and his wife, they did not have any children. So Tom, the brother, basically had this land on his plate. And at that time, he was willing to pick the baton up and carry it forward. My office ended up scheduling a meeting with Tom. And fast forward a little bit. It was Tom and their mom, Tom and Mike's mom, Sherry, who was at the meeting. Sherry, of course, was an emotional mess because this was her son. This is not the normal course of life, right? Mike was in his early 60s. Tom is about mid-60s as well, and mom, Sherry, is in her early 80s. So the meeting happens, and long story short, two things are products of the meetings, byproducts of the meeting. First, we obviously need to get a healthcare and financial power of attorney in place because no one at this point has authority to make decisions on Mike's healthcare, nor his legal or financial matters. Thankfully, post-stroke, Mike was well enough. He had the mental capacity to sign those documents. And the second thing we were going to be navigating and doing for Mike was getting him eligible for Medicaid, which was going to be a doozy of a process. And Medicaid is not to be confused with Medicare, which we've done plenty of episodes on. So we were going to be navigating a Medicaid path. So we got our plan together on getting the documents signed as well as commencing on the Medicaid path. And at that time, Mike's brother Tom was going to take the lead because his mom was struggling with everything. And we understood that Tom was our point of contact. So we get to work, get the documents prepared, we get them signed, etc. And we start working our way down the path of doing Medicaid. And we get a call from Mike and Tom's mom, Sherry, that Tom cannot and does not want to be the power of attorney anymore. And it was a little bit out of the blue, to be honest, because everything was fine and dandy working with Tom. But stuff happens like this quite frequently in my world because stress is high. And it was high here, very, very high. So Tom bowed out, and Sherry, the mom in her 80s, basically said, well, I guess I get to do this. And she was willing to jump in for Mike. But I genuinely had serious concerns about the level of stress and energy it would take her to get to the finish line. And I shared those concerns with her because obviously the last thing I wanted to do was have this woman step into this role and carry the stress and energy to a point of injuring or killing herself. And sadly, I see this stuff happen quite frequently where the one in charge carries so much stress that they start to have health issues of their own. So Sherry agreed to keep on keeping on. She agreed to be the one in charge and do everything needed to get Mike squared away. And I tell you what, she has done just that. Sure, does she have moments of total freak out and moments with tears? She sure does. But that's really normal in Medicaid world that, just a lot of moving parts. But you know what? We are there for her. We are there to listen to her. We are there to pick her up, and we're there to support her to keep going. And honestly, the relationship and friendship that Sherry has with a few of my team members at this point would warm anyone's heart. Heck, even maybe the Grinch. We would maybe even get a smile from the Grinch. So shifting over to the Medicaid side of the case, this is honestly where many of the total freakout moments and tears occurred. It really wasn't, it wasn't really too much about getting the basic documents like power of attorney in place. It was more through the Medicaid process that really tested Sherry. Mike did not really set up his people for success. And I'm not trying to poo-poo on him because honestly, a lot of people are massively unprepared or underprepared for if something happens. And what I mean by that is that their stuff is just not organized in any way, shape, or form. And that's what happened here with Mike and what Sherry was navigating through. For Medicaid specifically, there's a lot of documents and information that needs to be pulled. And not only did Sherry get thrust into this position, but now she has to gather all this stuff from a not very organized place. Now, she successfully did gather everything. It was kind of like pulling teeth, but we got there. But that wasn't her fault. It was the situation's fault, right? Mike's health had already been declining due to his Parkinson's diagnosis, but then the stroke hit, and it was like everything froze in time. It almost felt like Mike's piles of paperwork got bigger somehow. And I think it felt like that because Sherry was searching. And it was like searching for needles in a haystack, looking for this and that for us in the Medicaid process. Finally, once we had everything from Sherry, we were able to get Mike's Medicaid application filed. Yay! Before I go on, I do think it's important to pause and explain why Medicaid was even being considered, and maybe why the family chose to go through my office, which is an elder law firm. So if you remember, Mike and his wife were getting a divorce. And in the divorce settlement, Mike ended up getting the house and a little bit of money. Now, Medicaid actually allows for you to exempt out your house, meaning that they do not count it. But they only allow this in very limited situations. And one of those situations is if the person is single and the house is for sale. So because of Mike's condition, he had hit both of those qualifiers. He was single, and we were going to be selling the house because there was no way, shape, or form he was ever going to be able to live again. Or, excuse me, that was so terrible. That he was ever going to live alone again. And he just got to stay in a facility setting. But what the strategy was that we were going to exempt out the house for sale to get Mike immediately qualified for Medicaid. Then once we're through the doozy Medicaid process, Sherry was going to sell the house. And then once the house sells, he would temporarily get kicked off of Medicaid. But with our strategy, we were going to be able to save and protect some of those proceeds. And that is why you work with an elder law attorney, because a whole lot of people would tell you just to sell the house, spend the money on his care, and call it a day. But what we as elder law attorneys can do is implement strategies to protect some of that money and keep Medicaid footing the facility's bill. So it's a win-win. As we stand right now, we have, like I said, filed for Medicaid. But annoyingly so, Medicaid denied his application, which that word denial in that sentence sounds intimidating and scary. But Medicaid denies people all the time for honestly, absolutely inaccurate and incorrect reasons. And that's probably another reason you should work with an elder law attorney, because we can kind of nicely slap them around and get them straight. So the reason for Mike's denial, the reason that, that's what they hung their hat on, I guess, is, I kid you not, they had pulled a statement from Sherry's bank account, and they were counting Sherry's bank account balance like as part of Mike's Medicaid application. Sherry says, "Mom, there's no reason to drag her assets and accounts into his application process." I seriously wish I was kidding, but I'm not. That's just what they chose to use as their reason. And that was a flat out mistake and oversight on their part. So as soon as we got the, denial, my office got on the phone with Medicaid, and after several arguments, they finally pieced together what we were saying, and they made it right on their end. So with the story, there are two big takeaways. First, like I said at the beginning, please get your documents done. At the very least, everyone over the age of 18 needs a healthcare and financial power of attorney in place. These documents are such basic documents that take absolutely no time to create. And here in my state of Indiana, there are free estate planning document clinics that are often put on by our local bar association for individuals that are low income, low asset. And otherwise, if you don't meet their financial standards of being low income or low asset, these documents are so affordable to have done by an attorney. And everyone should have these documents in place, because life happens, right? Emergencies happen every single day to people of all ages. You can make it so much easier if something does happen. You can make it so much easier on those closest to you to make decisions on your behalf by simply having these documents in place. Now, secondly, as another takeaway from this episode, I really highly encourage folks to, who need help navigating paying for care. So think home health care, facility care, sorry, my email's going off, long-term care, and how to utilize benefits like Medicaid to foot the bill. I highly encourage folks to utilize an elder law attorney to do so. And I've said this before on here, and I'll say it again. An estate attorney and an elder law attorney are two very different fields. Every single elder law attorney does estate work. I could almost blanket say that, or estate planning, I should say. But not all estate attorneys do elder law work. So if Medicaid and long-term care is something you or a loved one has to navigate, I recommend getting an elder law attorney on your team. I'm in Indiana, and I'm happy to help people in my state, but Medicaid is a state-by-state kind of thing. So if I have a legalty listener that you may need a resource for an elder law attorney in your state, let me know. Feel free to email me, legaltpodcast@gmail.com, and I'd be happy to get you names and contact information for nearby elder law attorneys to you. Alrighty. Well, I usually try to give a little bit of a shout out for the next week, like a little sneak peek, which next week will be a current trends, current events topic. But to be honest, I'm writing this and I don't have really a set plan for that episode. So you know what? for once, I'm going to make you wait. You're just going to have to be surprised at what next week is about. But we all like surprises, right? Alrighty, so I will talk to you next Tuesday, Legal Tea listeners. Be well and talk soon.